You're standing in the drive-thru and you tap your card, $5. And the thought you have, the exact thought, is nothing. No hesitation, no pause, no math, just tap and go. Because come on, it's $5. What is $5 going to do? My name is Nico, and today we're figuring out exactly what that $5 is quietly doing to your wealth, your retirement, and honestly your entire financial future. Because I'm going to show you a number before this video is over that should permanently change the way you look at every single checkout line, every add to cart moment, every small swipe you've ever made without thinking. And if you stay until the end, you're going to understand something about money that most people live their entire lives without figuring out. If these kinds of honest money conversations are useful to you, a thumbs up and a subscribe genuinely help me keep making them. Here's what's fascinating and slightly terrifying about the world we're living in right now. We are more financially anxious as a generation than any generation before us, and yet we are somehow making more small, invisible, uncalculated spending decisions than ever. A Bankrate survey found that nearly 57% of Americans say they couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency from savings. 57%. And at the same time, the average American makes somewhere between 35 and 50 small discretionary purchases every single month. Things that barely register in the moment, things that feel like rounding errors, things that feel like $5. Not because people are reckless, not because they don't care about money, but because $5 does not feel like a financial decision, it feels like noise. And your brain was never built to calculate what noise costs you over 35 years. We are genuinely measurably bad at perceiving the weight of small numbers over time. There's a documented cognitive bias called temporal discounting, which basically means the further into the future a consequence sits, the less emotionally real it feels right now. So when your brain tries to weigh today's $5 coffee against the retirement account you'll have in 2059, your brain just blinks. It simply cannot make that comparison feel urgent, which means you're not making a bad decision when you tap your card. You're making a perfectly rational one with catastrophically incomplete information. And that's what today is about, giving you the information your brain never had. Now, before we get to the math, and the math is brutal, I'll warn you right now. I want to introduce you to two people, Derek and Marcus, same city, same age, 27. Similar incomes, both pulling in around $60,000 a year. They even work in the same building. The difference between them is so small, it's almost invisible, which is exactly the point. Derek stops at the coffee shop downstairs every single morning. A cold brew, sometimes a little something to eat, a pastry on Fridays when he's feeling it. He's not splurging. He's not being irresponsible. He's doing what millions of completely normal people do. The tab runs somewhere between $4 and $6 most days. We'll call it $5. Then there's Marcus. Marcus makes coffee at home. Not because he's cheap, he actually has a really nice setup and takes his coffee seriously, but because a few years ago somebody showed Marcus a number. And that number changed the way he thought about the coffee shop forever. Same $5 every day, two completely different futures. Here's where it gets really interesting. $5 a day is $150. It's $1,800 a year, and sitting in your checking account, that's not life-changing money. Everyone knows that. But money sitting in a checking account and money working in a broad index fund are not remotely the same thing. The S&P 500 has returned an average of roughly 10% per year over the long run. Not every year, some years are brutal, some years are spectacular, but averaged over long periods, 10% is the number. So let me show you the math. $150 a month invested in a broad index fund at 10% annual returns. You don't touch it, you don't try to time the market, you just keep putting in $150 every single month for 35 years, from age 27 to 62. That account is worth $487,000. Nearly $500,000 from $5 a day. I want you to hold that number for a second because your brain is going to try to reject it as impossible, and I need you to not let it $5 a day. Invested 35 years, $487,000. That is the cost of the invisible decision. And here's the crazy part. Derek didn't spend $487,000 on coffee. Over those 35 years, he spent about $63,875 in actual cash. That's what $5 a day totals out to. He gave up $63,875 and got nothing back. No asset, no return. Just 35 years of morning coffees he can barely remember. Marcus put in the exact same $63,875 and walked away with nearly $500,000. The difference isn't how much money they made. The difference isn't luck or income or some secret investing strategy. The difference is compound interest applied to a $5 daily habit. That's it. That's the entire story. Now here's where I want to be completely real with you, because this is the moment where most personal finance content goes wrong. The coffee is not the enemy. I'm not here to make you feel guilty about what you order at the drive-thru. If your morning routine genuinely brings you joy, if you budget for it on purpose and it's worth it to you, that is a legitimate financial decision, and I respect it. What I'm actually pointing at is not the coffee, it's the invisibility of it. Because the dangerous version of the $5 decision isn't the one you make consciously. It's the one you make on autopilot, the one you've stopped seeing entirely. Because here's what I want you to think about. How many $5 decisions did you make last week that you couldn't fully account for if someone asked? The add-ons at checkout you clicked without reading. The app subscription still running from something you tried once. The convenience fee you paid without looking. The drive-through stop because you didn't have anything at home. The impulse buy that appeared at the register right when you were tired. None of it feels like a problem individually. But according to data from Empower, Americans consistently underestimate their discretionary spending by 20 to 30% every single month. We just don't see the small stuff. And the small stuff is where most of the real financial leakage happens. The small stuff is where wealth quietly drains out. There's a concept in behavioral economics called the pain of paying, the psychological friction we feel when money leaves our hands. And research has found that this pain drops dramatically for small purchases. When you hand someone a $50 bill, you feel it. When you tap your card for $5, there is almost zero friction. And that absence of friction is precisely what makes the behavior invisible. You cannot redirect a habit you've stopped noticing. You cannot audit a cost that never lands. This is also why the $5 decision is really a $5 pattern. And patterns are where wealth is either built or dismantled. Because here's the part that will blow your mind. And I mean this literally, Marcus's $487,000 isn't just about the money. What Marcus was actually doing every morning he brewed coffee at home and moved $5 into his index fund was building something behavioral economists call future self-continuity. It's the degree to which you feel genuinely connected to and responsible for the version of yourself that exists 20 or 30 years from now. Research on wealth accumulation shows consistently that this metric, this sense of connection to your future self, is one of the strongest predictors of long-term financial outcomes, not income, not investment sophistication. The ability to feel the weight of a future that hasn't happened yet, and what trains that sense of continuity, small choices, made repeatedly, made consciously. Every time Marcus invested that $5 instead of spending it automatically, he was strengthening a mental pattern that influenced every other financial decision in his life. He was becoming someone who saw the long-term weight of present-day choices. Derek, with no disrespect to Derek, became someone who didn't. And by the time they're both sitting across from a financial advisor at 62, those identities, not those incomes, produced the gap. Now, here's the objection I know is sitting in your head right now. Nico, I'm not worried about $5. I make decent money. And honestly, that's fair. But I want to push back on something. This video isn't for people who are genuinely stretched, people for whom $5 is already allocated and accounted for. Those people can't redirect it because it's already spoken for. This video is for the person who earns a normal or even above average income and still somehow feels financially stuck or behind that person. Because if that's you, I promise you the $5 decisions are not the root problem. They are the symptom of a broader pattern of not seeing the small stuff. And the small stuff is compounding against you silently, every single day, building an invisible wall between where you are and the financial life you actually want. So here is what I actually want you to do with this video. Not quit coffee, not cancel everything, not go full austerity. I want you to run a 1-week audit for 7 days. Track every single purchase under $10. Every one. Not to judge it, just to see it. Because visibility is the mechanism that breaks the pattern. And I can almost guarantee you'll find at least $1 or $25 decisions in there that you genuinely rather redirect. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 3. Maybe you look at the list and realize you'd spend every cent of it the same way. And that's completely fine. But you'll know on purpose, not by accident. And that is an entirely different relationship with your money. Because here's the truth about compound interest that almost nobody says out loud. It doesn't care whether the habit it's compounding is a spending habit or a saving habit. It compounds both of them. It grows both of them with equal indifference. The only question, the only real variable, is which one you're feeding. Derek spent $63,875 over 35 years and has nothing to show for it except a vague sense that mornings used to be better. Marcus put in the exact same $63,875 and is sitting on $487,000 he built from something everybody else. The math didn't care about the coffee. The math only cared about the choice. You're not bad with money. You're working with an incomplete picture. You were never shown what $5 a day actually does over time, and you can't make great decisions with missing information. Well, now you have the information. Now you know what Derek never calculated and what Marcus used to quietly build nearly $500,000 out of one very small, very consistent, very invisible daily choice. That is how real wealth actually gets built. Not through windfalls, not through some special income level, not through secret strategies, through the quiet compounding power of small decisions made intentionally over a very long time. If this gave you a new way of seeing your money, share it with someone who needs to run the math. Everything we covered today is linked in the description, including a couple of resources to help you get started. I'll see you in the next one.